in the air to center. Back at the wall. It is gone. What a start. Dexter Fowler, hello in Game 7. 1-0 Chicago. Up to the number 2 spot, and in the biggest game of his life, a strikeout for out number 2. Here's one there, and he got him. Infield in, and they play Santana to Paul. He does, tie game. High fly ball into left. It's Bryant, thrown to plate, high, safe, under the tag, and the Cubs lead 2-1. High fly ball into right center. Davis came in, goes back, won't get there off the wall. It's 3-1. Lester, here's a fly ball into right center. Back at the wall, off the bat of Baez. 4-1. And this swing of the bat will end the night with a guy who's been so good.
I'm an emotional wreck.
It's only going to get worse. Just continue to breathe. That's all you can do, buddy.
Bryant taking off. Here's a shot into right by Rizzo. Bryant's going to come around. Another run. Bryant's safe, and it's 5-1. A left-handed hitter. Lester's coming in. It hits Ross. A run scores. Here comes Kipnis. He's safe. It's 5-3. Ross flies one into center. At the wall. And it's gone. The 39-year-old in his final game, David Ross. Now the game is in the hands of Aroldis Chapman.
It is the ultimate party in Chicago today on a gorgeous afternoon for a parade. No school for the kids on a Friday. Cubs celebrating, talking about it. That's what we're about to do. MLB Now on MLB Network after this parade right now. And welcome to MLB Now. Scott Braun along with Dan O'Dowd, Cliff Corcoran, and Joe Lemire, and the Cubs celebrate. It is a parade of all parades. And you know what I love, Dan? The fact that there's no school on a Friday. It just happened to be a teacher's work day. So the kids are all out.
Yeah, well, and by doing that, they've just created this whole new generation of Cub fans for years to come.
That's right. And also, I feel bad for the teachers, right? They're the only ones that have to be there. Everyone else calls
Oh,
them
you don't
sick.
know that. There could have been a lot of teachers in that, you know.
Yeah, I'm guessing meetings were a little shorter today.
Yes, makes a lot of sense. But really an epic day for the Chicago Cubs, for the city of Chicago, right? And 108 years they were waiting for this kind of party. And this is the day when fans can celebrate with the team.
Yeah, absolutely. When you win on the road like they did, this is their chance to sort of have that real embrace. And I mean, you saw it throughout all of the streets of Chicago. I mean, it felt like the city was about to combust. It was just so deliriously happy.
And I know you liked what Ben Zobrist said, Dan, that this whole city is full of MVPs on this day, fans that waited so long.
Well, there's just such an emotional connection with this particular franchise and its fan base. And you could just see they've been writing this story now for 108 years, and today was like the final chapter. Next year starts a new book for the Cubs.
Words from some of the Cubs at the parade.
I've been around baseball for a bit. Never have I experienced anything like Wrigley Field on a nightly basis. Never have I experienced anything like the conversation among all of you when I run into you on the street. It's different, it's spectacular, it's comfortable, it's warm, and it's the way it should be. So I want to congratulate you, the fans, also, and thank you for being so patient.
He gave me the opportunity to hold a trophy just like that last year and hoist it up. And I thought, how can I ever top this? And then I started thinking about Chicago. I started thinking about Wrigley Field, 108 years. And I said, I want to be part of that.
I was here during the bad times, and I got so much into the culture of the Chicago Cubs that every single person that has worn this jersey, I feel like won the World Series with us today or the other day.
Ben Zobrist spoke about Anthony Rizzo playing Rocky movies in the clubhouse, and we had the 17-minute rain delay when the team all huddled up. But, Cliff, when you look at this game, there were some other big storylines like the pitchers that were used over and over. I'm talking Chapman, Andrew Miller, Corey Kluber. Do you think they were overused?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing about this, with these extra rounds of playoffs and with, you use your best pitchers in the postseason. You don't tend to see the guys at the back of the bullpen or the back of the rotation get used. And the whole theme of this postseason was getting to your best relievers early and stretching them out. Really, every team that advanced in this postseason did that. These teams succeeded by doing that. The Indians more than the Cubs did, but the Cubs certainly did at the end, certainly in Game 5 with their oldest Chapman. And yeah, that does catch up to you over the course of not only a 7-game series, but a whole month worth of playoff games. And that did start to catch up at the end of Game 7.
It worked all the way up to Game 7 of the World Series, Dan.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people talk about the physical toll that it takes on pitchers. You got to remember, these relievers are coming into what? High leverage situation, usually the game on the line. Their defined focus, as Cliff talked about, for such a long period of time, I think leads to just as much physical. There is an emotional part of this that becomes so draining to do this time and time again. And I think it's simply just all caught up to these guys at the very end.
Yeah, I mean, you look at someone like Andrew Miller, who obviously was wildly successful for most of the postseason. For much of the regular season, I mean, he's facing 3-4 batters. I mean, frankly, almost every one of his innings was 1, 2, 3, as good as he was. And so now in the playoffs, he, on average, faced 8 batters every single appearance. It had been 5 years since he had stayed in the game long enough to face a hitter twice in the same game, and he did that multiple times here in October, which, again, is an extra month at the end of the season. So they're pitching in a new way in the short term in a particular game, but also on the macro sense of this extra month. And I think, Corey Kluber, who was as good as any pitcher in the postseason has ever been over multiple rounds, I think he was suffering from it as well as some of these relievers.
It's more work. It's also more familiarity. I mean, even with some of the best pitchers, don't you think the Cubs eventually figured out Andrew Miller?
Absolutely. It's a game of repetitiveness. Again, they see the same arm action, same action on the pitches. They begin to get more and more comfortable every at-bat they get. So that fear factor of the unknown, which makes the World Series so unique, because a lot of times they don't see these pitchers during the regular season if they're not in interleague play. And I do think that has a huge factor, Scott. I think that's a great point.
And this Indians team during the regular season, Cliff, showed us that they're great base runners and great defenders. And some of those numbers that we pointed to for the whole regular season didn't play out the way we thought it would in the World Series.
Well, the Indians were a fascinating team because I don't think anybody really even had them going past the first round. With the injuries they had to their rotation in September, facing the Red Sox, who I thought were the best team in the American League going down the stretch, they weren't supposed to win that series. They swept it. They won the next series, losing just 1 game. So the things they did in the postseason were actually very different. During the regular season, they won with their rotation. And yes, the base running. The base running did play out in the postseason. But they shifted the emphasis to the bullpen, like you said, and the familiarity and the extra turns, the extra innings, the extra pitches, and the emotional component, like you said before. I mean, just think about watching that game, how emotionally draining it was as we went back and forth, and pitching in it, playing in it, a whole other level.
So a ton of credit then to someone like Terry Francona, who made an adjustment in the postseason to switch the way that his team would operate.
Absolutely. I mean, he recognized that the postseason game is fundamentally different because of those travel days, because of the roster selection. You're not going to, as Cliff was saying earlier, you're not going to see that 6th or 7th reliever. There's really not a whole lot of need for him unless you're soaking up innings. And so, I mean, Francona is clearly one of the great managers we have today. The track record he had in Boston and now Cleveland. He's someone who, in those two franchises, has been, willing to try new things to great effect.
Yeah, and they were kind of set up that way all year long. I mean, it's been a platoon advantage club the entire year. He's been constantly kind of adapting and manipulating his entire roster, including the guys in the minor leagues. So I don't think this was a difficult adjustment for him, because I think the franchise is kind of set up in a model with their payroll limitations of trying to maximize what they have. I think they did just an incredible job, adapting to the situation they were faced with and getting to the point of having even a chance to win a series going to a Game 7.
They shocked some people because, for example, let's look at that outfield. Is that an outfield of starters that would start on most playoff teams in your mind?
No, not at all. And, because of that, though, there are also some deficiencies built in, and I really think we kind of saw that a little bit defensively in this series. There were plays that weren't made that I think really affected their ability to consistently close out games that they had a chance to win. And I'm sure it's something they looked at all year long. But when you're building this model, there's no way you can build a perfect club. You're going to have some deficiencies built into your process. That was one of them, and it showed up big time in the World Series.
And on the flip side of that, we just saw Chris Bryant scoring on that shallow fly ball. So on one hand, you have Rajai Davis, not really approaching the ball and getting quite the best throw that he could have. But you also have Chris Bryant, an aggressive base runner. And, as much as we've focused on the Indians, because particularly that base stealing, all season long, huge number and a high success rate. In the Bill James handbook that just came out recently, the Chicago Cubs actually ranked higher than the Indians if you are looking at base running outside of stolen bases, just going first to third on a single and things of that nature. The Cubs ranked 3rd in all of the major leagues, the Indians 8th. Chris Bryant and Ben Zobrist were both in the top 10 on an individual level. So we also need to give the credit to the Cubs for being very aggressive, and to Joe Maddon for, encouraging that kind of, base running behavior.
They were a more athletic ball club than the Indians, right?
Well, in Game 7 in particular, we saw this. The Indians, one of the ways they succeeded throughout the postseason coming into this World Series was by taking the extra base and winning low-scoring ball games and getting that decisive run or two with their legs. But the Cubs did that in Game 7. Now, this is the flyout that we saw to Rajai Davis. Not only did Chris Bryant tag on a shallow ball to center and score, but Zobrist tagged up and went to second and then was able to score on a subsequent play. This is Hayward in the 9th, taking 2 bases. That was actually an extremely important. It didn't wind up turning into a run. And here's Almora tagging up and going to second, which wound up being the tie-breaking run. They, in that game, took 7 extra bases, leading to 4 extra runs based on being closer to home or with Bryant tagging up, repeatedly taking. I mean, we saw Schwarber steal a base in that game. That was huge. The Indians did it too because they scored 2 on the wild pitch, but the Cubs beat them at their own game in that.
And Kyle Schwarber obviously made a mistake too, but for the most part, yeah, excellent base running. And he said after the infield single and then the stolen base, he felt like Superman. That's why he had to go around and give it a try next time.
The reality is, the longer this series went on, everybody that followed the Indians and were pulling for the Indians like me, we realized we were in a little bit of trouble, because the talent difference between the two clubs really showed up the deeper that series went on. You made a great point on athleticism. The athleticism between the two clubs showed up the deeper the series went on, and the depth of the roster that the Cubs had versus the depth of the roster that the Tribe had was very significant as you got into that game. Saying all that, it's tied going to extra innings in Game 7.
Which is amazing. And we'll break this game down much more a little bit later on. We'll do a little managerial check. Glory for the Cubs, heartbreak for the Indians, although we've seen this story before. And not long ago, the Royals came back the next year and won it all. We're going to go over the aftermath for Cleveland.
It's a brand new offseason.
offseason on MLB Network with an all-star lineup, including baseball's only offseason TV morning show. We live baseball 24/7, 365 on MLB Network.
Liberty Mutual stood with me when I was too busy with the kids to get a repair estimate. I just snapped a photo and got an estimate in 24 hours.
My insurance company definitely doesn't have that.
You can leave worry behind when Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Golden Corral's 7-day shrimp extravaganza just raised the stakes. Every day at dinner, enjoy new Founder sirloin and non-stop shrimp. Plus it up on the weekends with premium shrimp and new garlic herb buttered sirloin. It's non-stop shrimp and steak, all for one low price. Only at Golden Corral.
Nothing worth having comes easy. You have to get up every morning and put in the work.
Give him another.
Time, effort, commitment. These are your tools. You have to understand that there are no shortcuts here. Whether you're playing in the majors or making seriously good bourbon, you know the greatest achievements in life don't just happen. They're earned.
When you freeze something,
it's for later.
But how much later?
There's no way to be sure.
But Wendy's is sure that if you want a juicy, delicious hamburger right now, it should be made with fresh, never frozen beef, unlike some other guys. So that's what's in every single hamburger Wendy's serves, and the doubles and the triples. Because at Wendy's, fresh never gets old.
Forget everything you think you know. Discover a world of possibility with one blade from Philips Norelco, the blade for beards, and be your best you. One blade from Philips Norelco. See Marvel's Doctor Strange in theaters November 4th.
It's time to talk baseball. Use hashtag MLBNow on Twitter and sound off.
Hi, everybody. This is Pat Hughes. The Chicago Cubs are World Series champions. To commemorate this, BigTimeBats.com is releasing the 2016 World Series champions Louisville Slugger two-tone bat. The full-size bat will have the Cubs logo and the World Series champions logo. The bat is limited to 10,000 individually numbered bats and sells for $129.95. Call Big Time Bats now at 1-866-280-BATS.
Hey, Pop. Thanks again for the space.
Space. We had a lot of it. Till our son and his wife decided to move to an apartment in the city. Our stuff, our kids' stuff, our second cousin's stuff. We're putting it all in a family storage unit. So now I can get back to business. 7 off the 3 off the 5.
Space for your world. Clean, well lit, and conveniently accessible. Click, call, or come by, and your first month's rent is just $1. Public storage.
All year long, they've brought us their best. Now it's trophy time, and all the big awards are up for grabs. Who will win? Find out exclusively on MLB Network, starting Wednesday at 8 Eastern.
Game 7 of the World Series. These are the games you dream of playing. 176 years of combined frustration ends for one side. There's a nervous energy in this park. Nobody picked the Indians to even get out of the first round of the playoffs. The game that will decide it all. What a start! Dexter Fowler, hello, the 39-year-old in his final game. Baez, Kipnis, a bullet, 2-run homer. We are tied. Only in baseball can you get this kind of drama. This classic World Series can't end in 9 innings. Zobrist stands a base hit. Cubs will take the lead. Zobrist delivers. Base hit center field. It's an 8-7 ball game, and the Indians refuse to go home. The Cubs win the World Series. The Indians have fallen to the Chicago Cubs in arguably one of the most riveting World Series in baseball history.
And this is now a long, anxious winter for the Indians to wonder what if. And President of Baseball Operations Chris Antonetti and GM Mike Chernoff speaking to the media today about the state of the ball club.
there are a range of emotions that we're all feeling. Pain's certainly there. I'm not sure that's something that's going to go away anytime soon because we all desperately wanted to win that last game. But that won't overshadow the pride that we feel in thinking back and reflecting on the team and the grit, the resiliency, the perseverance they showed throughout the course of the season.
I think there were moments for all of us, probably fans, players, staff, all of us included, where you recognize 68 years and 108 years of not winning a championship. You saw some of the storylines that built up, the resiliency that our guys showed in the face of some challenges and hurdles that I think a lot of people didn't expect us to be able to get over. And it was really fun for us to enjoy in that process. So I don't know if that was it, but you could see two cities really supporting their teams, jumping in behind them and kind of living through their own values as cities in doing that. And that builds a broader narrative that probably engaged a lot of people nationally.
Yeah, and we heard a lot about what this Indians team was missing, but clearly a lot went right for them to get to this point. Jordan Bastian is with the Indians every day, covering the team for MLB.com. So, Jordan, what was special about this team to be so close to a World Series title?
Well, I think it starts with manager Terry Francona and kind of the culture he has created here. And over 4 years of him managing this team, when things have gone wrong for the team, instead of, wondering, why us, why now, it's kind of been that next man up mentality. And we saw that all year when they lost Carlos Carrasco, lost Danny Salazar, Yan Gomes missed a lot of time. Michael Brantley played only 11 games this year. And when they reached the playoffs, no one really expected the Indians to get as far as they did, and they did it short-manned. And I think a lot of that is a credit to, again, just the culture that Francona created here, that these guys are looking for a way to do it when everybody sort of counted them out.
And props to Tito. I mean, hearing Jason Kipnis, for example, saying he's like a 26th man and he never yells at us. And he's fun for us to cover, too, with the $44 room service ice cream that he orders and all the stories that go along with Tito. And it sounds like he's going to be in the future plans for a long time.
Yeah, he's been here for 4 years, and they built in some options in his contract, and they picked up the last two for 2019 and 2020. So he's going to be a part of the Indians for at least 4 more seasons. He's led the American League in wins over the 4 years that he has been here. He's won Manager of the Year once already. Probably could win it again this year. He's led them to the playoffs twice. I mean, it's been a pretty miraculous turnaround for this organization that was a 90-plus loss team the year before he came. Really, again, changed the culture here, really integrated the front office between the coaching staff and the players, broke down that barrier between the manager's office and the clubhouse. It's kind of been one of the guys, but also commands that respect, and it's been kind of fun to see the evolution here and how, 4 years later, how there's a total buy-in from his players to embrace their roles and do whatever it is that they're asked. And I think we really saw that pan out this season in what was a pretty amazing season for the Indians.
Yeah, Jordan, so Terry Francona is locked in. A lot of the core is locked in for next season. There is Mike Napoli as a free agent, Rajai Davis, also Coco Crisp. Of that bunch, who could you see returning?
Well, Antonetti told us today that they've talked to Coco Crisp. They won't pick up his option, so he'll be a free agent. Rajai Davis and Mike Napoli would be candidates to get a qualifying offer. Of the two, I think it would be more likely that Napoli would get it. Between the sunk cost for paying for Chris Johnson this year and between what Napoli got through his salary and also maxing out his incentives, they essentially paid $17 million to have Napoli as part of the team. He was a huge part of the clubhouse, led the team in home runs and RBIs. I wouldn't be surprised if they extended him a qualifying offer. But it would be more likely for him than Rajai Davis. But there's interest in retaining both players who had an enormous impact on this team this year.
Work to do for this team. Curious to see how the offseason goes. Jordan Bastian with us. Thank you very much, Jordan. Get some rest. I know a long, eventful World Series as we bring it back inside. Dan O'Dowd, Cliff Corcoran, Joe Lemire. And Joe, this is a team that is capable of being a Kansas City Royals in your mind, where we see them lose in the World Series and get rid of the hangover and win the next year?
Absolutely. I think they do have the core, the core players, particularly in that rotation. There certainly would be some warning signs of, how much extra use, Corey Kluber went through, for instance, pitching on short rest. And, he had 235 innings, 222, and now 249 if you include his playoff use this year. But, if he gets proper rest, if you've got Carrasco and Salazar back at full strength, if Brantley can come back at full strength, and that certainly a major one for them, because we were talking about the talent discrepancy with the Cubs, and you had guys like Jorge Soler on the bench for Chicago that probably would have started, at any of those positions for Cleveland. So I think there's some work to be done to particularly bolster that lineup. But I think we clearly saw a huge amount of talent. The rotation's great. Miller's back for another year to pair with Cody Allen. I think the Indians are going to be in good shape, particularly in that division.
And you mentioned Corey Kluber. They have to look at someone like that, Dan, and figure out how to handle him for next season, because we can also use the example of the New York Mets and what happened to all their starters the year after the World Series.
I think there's an attrition factor really with 4 of their pitchers, Kluber being the first one in their 3 bullpen guys, and Miller, Allen, and Shaw. How to handle that, they're going to have to figure out. I'm not smart enough to be able to do that, but I thought about it a lot, and I do think it's not just the innings, guys. It is the impact of the pitches they've made in pressure situations consistently through the course of this long run that they've been on. It is a very short off season because you have the WBC next year, which starts at a very early date next year. So how they handle him going forward, I think, is going to determine a lot of their success next year. You've got to keep in mind, this club had a $74 million payroll. It was 27th in the game. The 3 clubs behind them were in full rebuilding mode. They had as good a year as the Cubs had in winning the World Series because they maximized dollar for dollar better than any team in the game. So they've got a culture and a process in place that shows they can do this, but they're going to have to be very careful how they handle their most valuable assets.
We talked about the outfield not being up to standard maybe for a World Series team. They do have Michael Brantley. Hopefully he recovers.
Well, it'll be interesting. I mean, he basically missed the whole year. Yes, he played a little bit, but it was in between reoccurrences of his injury. And what he's going to give them next year at the age of 30, coming off that injury, coming off that time missed, it's not a guarantee. And you add that concern to the concerns about workloads with their top pitchers. And, yeah, I think the thing that's interesting about the Indians, you mentioned the Royals before. Both of these teams showed an ability to overachieve in the postseason. But the way the Indians did it in the postseason, I don't think they can do it over the course of 162 games. But in a weak division, they just have to get there. And if they can get there and they can have all these guys be healthy, bring that team back with a full rotation in Michael Brantley, then they could totally go deep again, but they have to get there first, and it's not a guarantee.
You're shaking your head about Brantley, not optimistic?
No, I think he was the missing piece for him. I think that veteran, pure hitter in the middle of their lineup, they missed him desperately during the World Series, and I feel really good about him coming back. I'm concerned about his injury, and the effects of his injury on his swing was what separates him and his ability from, being a normal player.
Clearly came back too early, barely played in 2016. Other teams not as fortunate as Cleveland. Big pieces of the puzzle could be gone, like Edwin Encarnacion, Ian Desmond. Richard Justice is going to weigh in on these potential free agents and more.
Secrets, gossip, trade rumors. Harold Reynolds, Matt Vasgersian, the relentless pursuit of the truth in the offseason. Hot Stove, Monday morning at 9 on MLB Network.
One day, a rider made a decision. The decision to ride on and save money. He decided to save money by switching his motorcycle insurance to Geico. There's no shame in saving money. Ride on, ride proud. Geico Motorcycle. Great rates for great rides.
Gary, I am proud of you, my man. Making simple, smart cashback choices. With Quicksilver from Capital One, you're earning unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase everywhere. Like on that new laptop. Quicksilver keeps things simple, Gary. And smart, like you. And I like that.
I guess I am pretty smart.
Don't let that go to your head, Gary. What's in your wallet?
See the film critics are calling thrilling. It's Marvel's most daring creation yet.
I even impressed myself.
Doctor Strange, rated PG-13, now playing everywhere.
Welcome to Stouffer's Fit Kitchen. Prime cuts of meat, 25 grams of protein, and savory mouth-watering sides. It's the perfect balance of delicious and nutritious, making it just the right fit for you. Stouffer's Fit Kitchen Meals. This is fit.
Psst, there's a smarter choice.
Here for the smarter choice. My razors will get you a high-quality shave at a very economical price.
Cool.
Nope, can't have this one. It's display. Get your first month of razors free at dollarshaveclub.com.
Hey, guys. Hey! Oh, is this the new boyfriend? Yes. We haven't met yet. You're the sweetest. Yes. Do you want to hold him?
Hold my baby, man. So easy to dip, so hard to put down. Rolled chicken tacos. Tasty shredded chicken all rolled up with your choice of dips. Back at Taco Bell.
Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo!
Leslie Nielsen.
Is this an official bat?
Along with Priscilla Presley, Reggie Jackson, and a cast that'll have you laughing out of your seat. The Naked Gun, November 11th on MLB Network. The baseball action continues on MLB Network in the Arizona Fall League. See the next wave of Major League phenoms take the field for the annual Fall Stars game, featuring first-round draft picks. Saturday at 8 Eastern, live on MLB Network.
Encarnacion hits a rocket. Take that parrot for a walk, Edwin.
The Blue Jays are in flight.
Encarnacion does it again.
No doubt about that one off the bat of Encarnacion.
Welcome to the 40 home run club. And when the games get tough, the big boys step up.
That's all kinds of trouble. He's going to walk the parrot around the bag. There could be less Parrots in Toronto next season. It's going to be tough to get back to the ALCS without that man. Let's bring in our guy, insider Richard Justice, on Edwin Encarnacion. Is there an update on his status with the Blue Jays?
Yeah, I believe the update is he's probably going to see what's there for him in free agency. Blue Jays have a lot of decisions to make. They have 10 free agents, and that list begins with Encarnacion and Jose Bautista, and I think the club doesn't feel it can afford both of them for sure, and probably not even one of them, depending on what the market is for Encarnacion. Let's look at this guy. He's 33 years old. He had 42 homers last year. He averaged 39 the last 5. And inside that clubhouse, he's one of those guys that they really love. If you're a team looking for a DH or a first baseman, let's say the Boston Red Sox, he's going to be the first guy you call.
Ooh, Boston Red Sox fans getting excited. That sounds sweet for them. And also, there's another reliever on the market in Greg Holland, who we didn't see at all last year coming off the Tommy John surgery, but he's going to throw for teams very soon, any day now. And do you think that he'll be highly coveted?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he will be. I think the Royals would like to bring him back. And, you know, we have all this list of teams that are looking for bullpen help. In fact, probably every team looking for bullpen help after a postseason where we've seen the importance of a bulked-up bullpen. This is a guy that the last time he was healthy in 2014 was among the best relievers in baseball. The prior 5 years, 60 games a year, 29 saves, ERA under 2. Almost 13 strikeouts per 9 innings. This is a big-time guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to the Royals, but you know, when you start throwing for teams, you get a market going, and with the emphasis put on bullpens after this offseason, this postseason, who knows what will happen.
It's a good thing for him, and we'll see some other big names as well from the relief market. And then there's a guy like Ian Desmond who proved his versatility. We thought last offseason it would be an easier story for him. I don't want to get fooled again, Richard. It seems like he'll get a qualifying offer with the Texas Rangers, but don't you think he should say no this time also?
Yeah, I think he's going to say no. He's 31 years old, and as Dan knows, I mean, how many cracks does a guy get at free agency like this? But He is a cautionary tale for every player. He turned down $107 million from the Nationals in the spring of 2015. He thought last offseason would be a big one for him. He ended up signing a spring training deal with the Rangers for $8 million. Look, he changed positions. He made the All-Star team in center field. He had an OPS just under 800. He's a prime player. And you look at the market. The Nationals are looking for a center fielder. The Cardinals, the Astros, they're all looking for a center fielder. But then you have Carlos Gomez is going to be out there. Dexter Fowler is going to be out there. It is a tough decision. And that qualifying offer number, $17.2 million, that's a big number right now. But my guess is no, he's going to try and see one more time in free agency and see what's there for him.
Yeah, that number sounds good to me. He did dip a little bit production-wise in the second half of the season. All right, fresh news for us. It sounds like Phoenix is the new Boston. Mike Hazen moves over to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and now we have news on their manager.
Yeah, Torey Lovullo's the guy. It was the guy, the first name we all thought of when Mike Hazen went to Phoenix. He has a close relationship with Torey. He watched Torey be an interim manager in Boston. He is a guy known for his people skills, known for his ability to incorporate analytics into his day-to-day decision-making, and he and Mike Hazen have a good relationship, and they're off to a really flying start in Phoenix with this guy.
Richard, thanks for the time. Get some rest. We'll see you at the GM meetings next week, and we really enjoyed all the articles you put together during the World Series, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Richard Justice with us on this Arizona Diamondbacks team, Dan, that now has its guys in place, front office-wise and manager. They made major changes.
Yeah, I do think the manager's a great hire. You know, this goes all the way back to Cleveland. Torey was a manager in the minor league system. Mike was in their player development area. So this is a long-term relationship. It's the most crucial relationship within an organization between a manager and a GM. And now, since that's already cemented, they can hit the ground running and implementing their strategy and developing the culture that they're trying to do. I really like the pieces this club has in place. You know, I think they had a lot of good things in a bad year happen for them in 2016, and I think they can turn things around relatively quickly.
It's not a reclamation project when you look at the Diamondbacks. They were a 500 team 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you look at last season, and you know, Zach Greinke certainly had a season that no one really could have expected. He's much better than that on a usual basis. A.J. Pollock missed a huge portion of that season. Jake Lamb started emerging, particularly late. So, you know, Torey Lovullo, he's someone who, you know, in Boston only took over as interim manager for about a month or so, but the team played very well at the end of what otherwise was
28-20.
Yeah, it was a very lost season for them. So I think, you know, that's an encouraging start, and I think the Diamondbacks are in a decent shape to start moving forward. I'm not sure they're going to suddenly start playing with the Dodgers next season, but give them 2 or 3 years and they'll get there.
They need arms.
They need arms, you know, and that's what they needed a year ago. A year ago, I looked at this team, and I said if they could just get a couple of front-end starters, they could be right there with the young talent that they had. I thought that they would. They went out, they got Greinke. It was like, oh, my goodness, they're making their move. They're going to be top of this division, right with the Giants and the Dodgers. And then the Miller-Enciarte trade happened, and it all started to fall apart. I think losing Enciarte, the hit on their outfield defense on the top of their order, that hurt a lot. Miller nobody thought he was going to be that level of a disaster. But, and of course, losing Dansby Swanson. They have a lot of infielders, but that trade hurt a lot. And then the Pollock injury on top of it, and the bottom fell out. But with Pollock comes back, if Greinke and Miller was so bad last year, we don't know to what degree he'll be able to come back. But Greinke should, because he seemed to have that kind of like early free agency, new team, a lot of pressure kind of, and then he settled down as the season went on. Exactly. So I expect better things from Greinke. And they have young talent, especially in the infield. But I still feel the loss of defense in the outfield. If they keep running Yasmani Tomas out there in the outfield, they're only going to get so much better.
They need a DH.
I do think Pollock will help with that, having a full season of Pollock. And I agree with you on Tomas. He probably needs to be in the American League. I think, obviously, the keys for them, Patrick Corbin had a 5.5 ERA. I did not see that coming. Miller was horrendous. Greinke wasn't very good. They have pieces there that have talent to get better. So it's better than not having any pieces at all. They really need to attack their bullpen, though. They've traded away a lot of their bullpen. They have some younger arms. As we see in this game, the quickest path to competitiveness is a capable rotation. I really love their offensive potential of this club, but they've got to address their bullpen. They need some shutdown guys in the back end.
I thought you were going to see that the quickest path to competitiveness is a strong bullpen, because we've seen teams like the Orioles.
That's what I'm saying, absolutely.
Yeah, the Orioles and the Royals.
The rest of the pieces of that club are there, but they really need to shore up.
And the
their
Diamondbacks
bullpen.
did that in 07 when they won the division.
They have that opportunity. There's going to be guys available for them to buy. It is definitely a tough division, though, and we'll get back to the World Series while it's still fresh on our minds. Game 7 featured some moves that we would like to scrutinize. Perfect time for a mega managerial check on the most important game of the season coming up.
The wait is almost over. It's trophy time on MLB Network. The Baseball Writers Association of America announces their awards finalists Monday at 6 Eastern. Then don't miss the exclusive presentations of the awards beginning next Monday, all exclusively on MLB Network.
When you freeze something,
it's for later.
But how much later?
There's no way to be sure.
But Wendy's is sure that if you want a juicy, delicious hamburger right now, it should be made with fresh, never frozen beef, unlike some other guys. So that's what's in every single hamburger Wendy's serves, and the doubles and the triples. Because at Wendy's, fresh never gets old.
David, you have one of the worst cavities I have ever seen. Okay, have a good day.
Aren't you gonna fix it?
Well, I'm not a dentist, I'm a dental monitor. I just tell you when you have a bad cavity.
It's bad. Lunch?
Oh, yes.
Where are you going?
Why monitor a problem if you don't fix it? That's why free credit monitoring isn't enough to protect you. At LifeLock, we not only alert you to identity threats. If you have a problem, we'll spend up to $1 million on lawyers and experts who'll work to fix it. LifeLock. Try 60 days risk-free using promo code CAVITY.
We're gonna prove just how wet and sticky your current gel antiperspirant is. Now, we're gonna show you how Degree Dry Spray is different. Degree Dry Spray. Degree. It won't let you down.
Have you noticed a lot of auto insurance companies are saying the same thing? Switch to us and save a bunch of money. Great if you have a perfect driving record, but what if you don't? You still want a low rate? Well, right now at The General, you can get an anonymous online quote with low payments, choice of due date, and immediate proof of insurance with a digital ID card. Find out how low your monthly payments can be.
Get an anonymous online quote now. For a great low rate you can get online, go to The General and save some time.
Hi, Misty. We're traveling. There's a hedgehog too.
Golden Corral 7-day shrimp extravaganza just raised the stakes. Every day at dinner, enjoy new Founder sirloin and non-stop shrimp. Plus it up on the weekends with premium shrimp and new garlic herb buttered sirloin. It's non-stop shrimp and steak, all for one low price. Only at Golden Corral.
Forget everything you think you know. Discover a world of possibility with one blade from Philips Norelco. The blade for beards. And be your best you. One blade from Philips Norelco. See Marvel's Doctor Strange in theaters November 4th.
During the off-season, every move causes a chain reaction. As the deals roll out, rivals race to get stronger. However the pieces fall, MLB Tonight will cover every twist, every turn, and whatever else pops up. MLB Tonight. Tonight at 6 Eastern, only on MLB Network.
It's a brand new offseason on MLB Network with an all-star lineup, including baseball's only offseason TV morning show. We live baseball 24/7, 365 on MLB Network.
Interestingly enough, Corey Kluber will start the inning on the mound.
Miller is standing on the bullpen mound, ready to go.
Here's a fly ball into right center. Back at the wall, off the bat of Baez. 4-1.
First walk allowed by Hendricks.
There's a move coming here. Boy, this is an extremely quick hook.
Second hit of the game for Ramirez, and that will bring out the skipper, Joe Madden.
Joe's going to probably bring in Chapman and give him some freedom to work with before the tying run gets to the plate. This will be a gutsy call right here. The go-ahead run is at third base with one out, and you've got basically a designated thrower in Michael Martinez taking over in right.
He shows bunt and strikes out. What in the world was that?
Clearly, some rules get thrown out the window for a Game 7. All hands on deck, as they say. But, Cliff, you're ready to break this down for us. You brought your scorecard. That's really bringing the prep. Let's do it. Managerial check, and the ultimate Game 7 World Series edition begins with, I would say, the most heavily scrutinized move. Here comes Aroldis Chapman, Dan, in Game 6.
Yeah, again, I agree with him coming into Game 6. You don't want to be the manager that loses a 7-2 lead. I just didn't agree that he pitched as long as he did. I think once he came in and shut that inning down, it was time to use the rest of your bullpen. Because when you're ahead 7-2, you have to have the confidence other guys in your pen can hold that kind of lead. They tacked on 2 more. So I think that he shot a lot of bullets in that game that could have been used in Game 7.
And didn't the pitcher need to be ready to replace him when they have that 7-2 lead, like a Pedro Strop?
Whoever it might have been, yeah, you have somebody up right away throwing to back him up at that point in time. But I do agree that it was important for them to shut down that inning down. The other thing, guys, can you imagine how fast the game must be moving on the managers in these crucial situations with so much, at stake? It's got to be moving pretty quickly. And that's where your staff around you has to help you with things that maybe you didn't check off in that situation.
Did you have a problem with Chapman Game 6? And then we saw Game 7, too, overused there.
I had a problem with him coming into Game 6 at all. Yes, you've got to shut that down, but you've got to be able to trust some of your other relievers with a lead, a 5-run lead. I mean, even there's a base open, third base is open, there's 2 outs in the inning. If you can't trust anybody else in your bullpen to get that last out, maybe if you bring another arm in and he gives up a run and then you go to Chapman, you've still got a 4-run lead. I mean, I just didn't see the point of bringing him in at all. And when they did bring him in and he stranded the runners, they should have gotten him right out.
You didn't trust anyone, though. Madden only said he trusted Montgomery and
Which I can't believe
Chapman.
he said that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm with Dan, though. I think you can't, the regret of blowing that lead would have been way too much. I think Chapman was the guy to go in and defuse the situation, but I also agree that he should have been removed from the game soon thereafter. But also to Dan's point about how fast that game moves, I was talking to someone in a front office recently who, sort of talking about the way that the bullpen uses have changed so much this month, and he reminded me, he's like, look, at minimum, you need a 2-batter head start to warm up a pitcher. And so it's not just how fast the game is moving, it's also trying to foresee all these situations in advance. So, I think the fact that Chapman, getting out of that inning, great, but then you have a whole half inning just while your team is batting to get somebody else warming up, and that's what should have happened.
John Lester was ready, though, to replace Kyle Hendricks too early.
Absolutely. I think Kyle Hendricks was pitching really well, and I think his curveball command was starting to improve. The run he did give up occurred after a pitch to Carlos Santana that I think most people watching would have called strike 3, although it did turn into a walk. But, even if it is just that one run, he had a few-run lead. I would have let him go a little bit farther, especially since he didn't want Lester coming in with a guy on base.
5-1 lead, 2 outs, 5th inning. Do you leave him in?
Yeah, well, of course. But I think this is a bigger battle between the analytical world a little bit and the human element. I think if you really watch the game tells you what you need to see. Kyle Hendricks, the first 2 innings of that game, he was struggling a little bit to find his rhythm. Once he found his breaking ball and was commanding his breaking ball at both halves of the plate, everything else changed. That was a type of game I felt that Kyle could have gone even past that, though analytically we know a third time through the lineup that OPS jumped something. That's when I think your eyes tell you that he had found himself and was in a rhythm, and it was going to be difficult to square him up at that point in time.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yes, it was the heart of the order, and that really, I think, is the excuse. Third time, heart of the order. But he had settled in, was cruising, 2 outs, had essentially struck out Santana, which would have been his 8th out in a row that he would have recorded. I think they went far too early, and there were repercussions from that. On down the line, Lester came in with a man on base, which you didn't want to have happen. Now, yes, it's Santana, and he's going to stay put. But, the little squib shot, Lester just kind of goes, oh, not my ball.
Right.
And then
think
Ross
that was just as big. Bringing
absolutely.
Lester in without a clean inning, which is something I don't think Joe said before the game he wanted to do. So, and Lester pitched great, but you're pitching Hendricks on full 5 days rest, with John on 2 days rest. And I think that's a case where, again, the analytics tell you one thing, but the way the player was performing and executing his pitches in a crucial situation told you something else.
Just to get the feeling when you're out there of how your pitcher's working, where he's at, how about physically, the toll on Corey Kluber, and we kind of shook off short rest, but it looked like it took a toll on him Game 7. I would have taken him out earlier.
Yeah, I think everybody in the game would agree with you there. I think if you really looked at him, I thought John Schmaltz made a great point when he noticed Corey's arm speed, his position of his arm, his hand above the ball just was not the same. He was dealing not only with physical fatigue, I think he was dealing with some emotional fatigue too, and that was a case. It was interesting because everything Terry had done throughout the entire postseason was aggressive in his decision-making pattern. I think he had a horse there, and I think as he looked to set up the rest of his pen, he was hoping to get one more inning out of him.
Yeah, I think Francona probably went into this game thinking Kluber, Miller, Allen, and I don't want anyone else to see that mound. And if by taking out Kluber a little bit earlier, then all of a sudden you're opening up, a few more innings on the back end that to other guys that maybe you don't want to trust. And I think Kluber was clearly feeling the effect of all those, short rests. His third time in the postseason doing so after never having done so before. And then as we turned out, Miller wasn't quite as sharp as he usually is either. So, it's kind of a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation.
Yeah, and the thing that screamed out to me about Kluber was that he didn't strike anybody out in 4 innings. It was the first time in his career as a starter or reliever he hadn't struck out anybody. And that says a lot for a guy who had a 19 strikeout or 17, 18 strikeout game last year. And he and Miller combined in 6 1/3 innings struck out 1 batter. Kluber and Miller, I mean, that tells you a lot about how tired and off their game they were in that game.
On the Cubs lineup that strikes out all the time.
That's right, and we saw 8 Ks from him in that first start, so it kept going downhill for him. We learned a lot there from the most highly anticipated Game 7 ever, but how good was the actual game? We're going to stack it up next to the rest of the epic Game 7s in history.
Secrets, gossip, trade rumors. Harold Reynolds, Matt Vasgersian, the relentless pursuit of the truth in the offseason. Hot Stove, Monday morning at 9 on MLB Network.
From the creators of Frozen and Zootopia.
Let's save the world.
I'm out. Oh, come on! Dwayne Johnson, Auli'i Cravalho.
Sorry, I thought you were a monster.
Disney's Moana, November 23rd, rated PG.
Liberty Mutual stood with me when I was too busy with the kids to get a repair estimate.
Liberty did what?
Yeah, with Liberty Mutual, all I needed to do to get an estimate was snap a photo of the damage and voila.
Voila. I wish my insurance company had that. Wait, hold it, boys. There's supposed to be 3 of you. Where's your brother? Where's your brother? Hey, where's Charlie? Charlie?
You can leave worry behind when Liberty stands with you. Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Wouldn't you rather have a big DQ chicken strip basket instead of those little nuggets?
Wow, that's a big meal.
You got a big appetite.
Hey, I'm a big man.
You are big.
I'm big enough to lift this man.
You don't have to do that.
Yes, we do.
Go big with the DQ Chicken Strip Basket, now just $4.99.
If time is a measure of how good something is, then Evan Williams Bourbon has something really good going. Seriously good. Since 1783, Evan Williams has proven one thing, that a good bourbon is a smooth bourbon. Many years and many barrels later, people are still reaching for the smoothness of Evan Williams. That means something, doesn't it? Evan Williams, seriously good bourbon. And for more of a good thing, try the smooth flavor of Evan Williams Honey.
It's time to talk baseball. Use #MLBNow on Twitter and sound off.
Hockey's biggest stars face off on NHL Center Ice, bringing you up to 40 games a week no matter where you live. Watch your favorite teams and players light the lamp, coast to coast, all season long. And paired with NHL Network, it's your season ticket to the most hockey on TV. The game lives where you do. Order NHL Center Ice now and don't miss another moment of action. Call 1-800-GET-SPORTS.
The news comes fast and furious once the World Series ends. Gut reaction handles some of it. Mike Matheny was extended for another 3 years. He signed up to lead the Cardinals through 2020. Dan O'Dowd, fan of the move.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's one of the better managers in the game. I think he creates a great culture. And I think stability in that role is incredibly important to an organization.
They missed the playoffs for the first time since 2010. You okay with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about the most consistently successful franchise in this game for about a decade, constantly overachieving, their talent level. I think a lot of that probably has to do with the manager.
I'm not a huge fan of Matheny. I don't have a lot of strikes against him, but I'm not really strongly in favor of him. He was, there was that run of managers that came in without a lot of experience. He doesn't seem to have a great hold on how to manage his bullpen. But, the team is so talented that he'll be fine.
Good off his Christmas card.
Let's move on to the first notable trade of the offseason. Cameron Maybin to the Angels. And he only cost $9 million, Cliff. This was interesting to me because the Detroit Tigers are looking to shed money, but he's not that expensive.
Well, also they had an option on him. They could have just declined him. I think they were intending on declining his option to begin with, and so they traded. The arm they got for him is nothing real special. Is a live arm, but it hasn't really accomplished much in the minors. I don't know why they didn't want. He's a guy who's been hurt a lot. 319 plate appearances per year since 2013. He's going to be 30. His defense has gone downhill in recent years. I could see why they were going to cut there.
Well, he'll move to left. I think it's a good move on the Angels' part. The acquisition costs weren't high. It's a one-year deal. When you don't have any prospects to trade within a system, these are the moves you have to make.
Yeah, I'm with Dan. I think he's going to be a good complement in left field. He's not going to have to play center field because you've got that guy named Mike Trout. And so between the two of them, they're going to cover a lot of ground. And he showed, especially in the second half, his bat started to play a little bit better. If it's an adjustment that lasts, good for them.
Slugging for left fielders for the Angels this year, .313. So it's going to go up for them. All right. Here's the big one, Game 7. Was it the best of all time, Cliff? I know you've put lists together. Where does this rank?
I had a list on SI earlier this year. I had 1960 as the best game still, even after this one, because the Pirates led. The Indians never had a lead in this game, but it's number 2.
Joe?
I am going to say that this was the best one.
Number 1.
Yeah, I think, lots of ups and downs. I think the Rajai Davis home run is, sort of a classic, almost like Carlton Fisk type moment where it's the losing team has a seminal moment. I think the rain delay was kind of this karmic pause that to remind these teams of all the hopeful waiting they've had for decades before the final conclusion. Lots of storylines. I liked it.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument that this one was. I'm going to take 1991. I thought that game was riveting. My first experience of something so loud, watching that on TV in the Metrodome. I thought it was an exceptionally well-played game. It went extra innings. It was a walk-off base hit by Gene Larkin. I just feel like that was the one for me that captured my imagination the most.
Can we agree before the game, most highly anticipated game because of the droughts?
Absolutely.
For sure. Yes. Okay, good. That's a full sweep. Yes, at the buzzer. Good timing. And time for our trivia question. Think baseball. And this has to do, it's a little bit of an ode to Andrew Miller, dominating for almost all of the postseason. Which reliever has the highest win probability added in a single postseason? A guy who contributed big, important, successful innings. That's next.
Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a burglar who broke into her home and ransacked the place, making off with several valuable tuffets. Fortunately, Geico had recently helped her with homeowners insurance. She got full replacement on her tuffets. The burglar was later captured when he was spotted with whey on his face. Call Geico and see how much you could save on homeowners insurance.
When you freeze something,
It's for later.
but how much later?
There's no way to be sure.
But Wendy's is sure that if you want a juicy, delicious hamburger right now, it should be made with fresh, never frozen beef, unlike some other guys. So that's what's in every single hamburger Wendy's serves, and the doubles and the triples. Because at Wendy's, fresh never gets old.
Hey, I'm Ty Pennington, and I've got a simple question for you. Are you paying too much for your mortgage? Well, you won't know for sure until you check with Guaranteed Rate. You can do it right now. It's that easy. With Guaranteed Rates Digital Mortgage, you can choose from today's lowest rates, check your free credit scores, and even get approved online. Anytime, anywhere. All in just minutes, at no cost to you. Lowering your mortgage payment could save you thousands of dollars. Just take a few minutes right now to see how much you could save.
We were going to rent. That was the going-in plan, but the rate was so low at Guaranteed Rate that we ended up buying.
Whether you're buying a new home or refinancing your current home, get a low, low rate from Guaranteed Rate. Visit rate.com right now to find out how much you could save. Call 1-888-557-1555 or visit rate.com.
Psst, there's a smarter choice.
Here for the smarter choice. My razors will get you a high-quality shave at a very economical price.
Cool.
Nope, can't have this one. It's display. Get your first month of razors free at dollarshaveclub.com.
Every off-season move causes a chain reaction. As the deals roll out, rivals race to get stronger. However the pieces fall, MLB Tonight will cover every twist and every turn. Tonight at 6 Eastern on MLB Network.
And welcome back to MLB Now on a day when the Chicago Cubs celebrate in grand fashion. Yeah, hold on to that thing tight. That's on the edge a little bit there from Miguel Montero.
So was Lackey right there.
That would not have been a good move if that fell off.
Yeah, we saw the Seinfeld where George dragged you through the parking lot. We hate to see that happen.
On MLB Tonight on our post-game show a couple days ago, Ben Zobrist almost left his World Series MVP trophy on the desk. So a little bit of forgetting, but that's okay. We'll remind them. Kyle Schwarber and company, this Cubs team, the ultimate storyline here this year with the drought. And you look at some of the storylines within, individual ones, like a Kyle Schwarber. I mean, it was truly amazing what we saw for him to come back like that.
That was amazing. I mean, you think about it. He didn't play at all during the regular season. He gets 8 at-bats, I think, in the Arizona Fall League, jumps on a plane, and it just starts raking from day one. That'd be like not taking a snap the entire year in the NFL and playing in the Super Bowl, not taking a shot the entire year and then playing the NBA Finals. I mean, it's just what he did was incredible.
You talked about, setting up the pitching machine, and was it 13,000 or
sure, but
who knows what
machine,
it is?
Right?
But like, how does that even compare? Like, people started accepting that as if this was a meaningful preparation for what he was going to see. And as you said, he started, batting 5th in the first game, and he was hitting so well, he moved up to 2nd by World Series Game 7.
This guy could fall out of bed in the middle of the night and hit 3-line drives. He's that good of a hitter, and his confidence level about himself is that high.
And he looked so good right away that fans wanted him to be playing, Cubs fans at least, in the outfield. And he said, I heard him on the radio this morning, that there was no chance. He was not able to move like that because you could look at him running around the bases at the plate and think maybe, but he said
no, that would have been too great a risk. I mean, this is really an important part of them moving forward. And the doctors made an incredibly prudent decision in saying, listen, we'll let him DH and run the bases, but we're not going to put him out there.
And let's hear him speak on Parade Day.
Yeah, Chicago. All right. I want to thank everyone out here. It was a crazy year for me. You guys kept me going through the rehab. All the credit goes to my teammates. They pushed me through it. They got to the World Series, and for me to be able to contribute, it was awesome. I love you guys. We're world champs. Let's do it again next year.
Oh, now they're getting greedy. Let's do it again next year. And even Anthony Rizzo said, he saw Blackhawks fans get more excited now after they won the first time around. And fans show up now, and they have more confidence, and he feels Cubs fans are going to be the same way.
Well, no doubt. I would think that this takes their self-esteem as a Cub fan to a different level. Maybe boring and obnoxious at some point.
I mean, you can make the argument, and I'm going to be facetious here. I'm going to preface it appropriately, that this is a terrible move from a marketing and brand perspective. I mean, the Cubs are
they're not the lovable losers anymore.
Exactly.
They're the lovable winners.
But that said, the comparable one here, of course, is the Red Sox winning in 2004, and so much of that sellout streak that they had for so long was after that. I think very much to the point you guys were making that the fan fervor is going to catch up, and you're not going to have an empty seat in Wrigley Field for a few years.
It's a pretty typical pattern that when you win, even if it's just like the Blue Jays making the playoffs for the first time in 20-odd years last year, you see attendance carry over into the next season. And also with the Cubs, because the whole thing with the Cubs was the curse, right? They can't win. They'd never even been in the World Series since before my daughter's grandparents were all born. I mean, the fact that now it's possible. Now it's possible. They can do it. There is no curse. Of course, there never was any curse. But, you know, so that whole thing, it opens it up wide. So I think that, yeah, absolutely. And this team is so good and so young. They probably, maybe not next year, but maybe they will be back.
So good that they give almost $200 million to Jason Hayward, and they still win the World Series. I find it ironic that sabermetricians break down someone like Jason Hayward, right? And we talked about him a lot in the offseason. And then what he does, one of his biggest contributions is in the locker room. Intangibles. For 17 minutes during the rain delay, they said he stepped up. He's usually a quiet guy.
I took a lot of heat in the offseason because I crunched some numbers and said he may have been worth way more than what they actually paid him. But nobody expected him.
You want to take that back then?
I do not want to take it back because nobody expected him to have that kind of horrendous season at the plate that he had. But he did continue to contribute on defense and on the bases. The Cubs had the best defense in the major leagues by far. Jason Hayward was a big part of that. We saw him make some big plays in this series that if a different outfielder was out there, if Jorge Soler or somebody else was out there and those plays weren't made, things could have gone in a different direction. We saw in the 9th inning when he stole that base and went to third. That didn't result in a run, but in terms of win probability added, it was huge. He's a quality.
You are really fishing here now. He was a -4 WAR player from a year ago. Offensively, he was terrible.
He was horrendous.
He could not have played good enough defense to make up for that offense.
He was above replacement. Because
if
of his
he was a free agent right now, would you pay $300 million? Would you pay $200
because
million?
that year's on the books. But for looking at him last year, nobody expected that. He's still young. I expect a bounce back. I don't expect a big, huge season, but I never expected him to be a major offensive force.
He's going to have to redo his swing completely.
Yeah, he's got to start from scratch.
But
he's got to wipe the memory banks and start
What
over.
I really give credit to Jason for, when you watched him struggle throughout this entire season, and we really got to see it in postseason, he never quit one time. His competitiveness, day in and day out, I think that's why he earned the respect of his teammates to be able to have that kind of discussion with them and step up and say the things he did, because he had earned their trust through the fact they saw this guy absolutely be not a very good player through the course of the season, but he showed up every single day and he competed.
And there was a period there in the postseason where he got benched and he came and he didn't sulk.
He was the ultimate team player.
Absolutely.
And, on the topic of intangibles from teams that are analytically inclined like the Cubs certainly are, I still remember in the moments after the 2013 World Series ended when the Red Sox had won. That, of course, was the team with, Victorino and Napoli and David Ross, and that had such good chemistry, and guys were talking about that.
Johnny Gomes on that team.
Johnny Gomes, of course, and Charrington afterwards said, "Hey, look, I'm not going to stand here and say we know what impact it has, but clearly, look around. This is there is some impact to chemistry, and it may just be a sales pitch for David Ross is the market inefficiency of all kinds, because he's the one commonality between these situations, but it plays some role, and good for Hayward to have this moment. He's certainly a great competitor. Hopefully we see his swing turn around.
And the story does still pop up time to time, those like the 2013 team and what we got in the Game 7 little speech that Jason Hayward gave during the rain delay. And we have more transactions to break down on MLB Now. Options picked up, declined, dished out. Which ones work, which ones don't for us? We'll talk about it.
Whoa, this is awful. Try it.
Oh, no, that looks gross. What is that?
You gotta try it. It's terrible.
I don't want to try it if it's terrible.
It's like mango chutney and burnt hair.
No, thank you. I have a very sensitive palate.
Just try it.
Guys, I think we should hurry up. If you taste something bad, you want someone else to try it. It's what you do.
I can't get the taste out of my mouth.
If you want to save 15% or more on car insurance, you switch to Geico. It's what you do.
Shh. Dog.
Wouldn't you rather have a big DQ chicken strip basket instead of those little nuggets?
Wow, that's a big meal.
You got a big appetite.
Hey, I'm a big man.
You are big.
I'm big enough to lift this man.
You don't have to do that.
Yes, we do.
Go big with the DQ Chicken Strip Basket. Now just $4.99.
Forget everything you think you know. Discover a world of possibility with one blade from Philips Norelco, the blade for beards. And be your best you. One blade from Philips Norelco. See Marvel's Doctor Strange in theaters November 4th.
Why do some cashback cards make earning bonus cashback so complicated? They limit where you can earn bonus cashback to a few places, and those places keep changing every few months. The Quicksilver card from Capital One doesn't do any of that. With Quicksilver, you earn unlimited 1.5% cashback on every purchase everywhere. Leave complicated behind. What's in your wallet?
Golden Corral 7-Day Shrimp Extravaganza just raised the stakes. Every day at dinner, enjoy new Founder Sirloin and non-stop shrimp. Plus it up on the weekends with premium shrimp and new garlic herb buttered sirloin. It's non-stop shrimp and steak, all for one low price. Only at Golden Corral.
Welcome to Stouffer's Fit Kitchen. Prime cuts of meat, 25 grams of protein, and savory mouth-watering sides. It's the perfect balance of delicious and nutritious, making it just the right fit for you. Stouffer's Fit Kitchen meals. This is fit.
Parade Day, millions across the city of Chicago. Is this not incredible or what? I mean, this is not a mega concert. This is the Cubs stepping up, receiving praise from the crowd, a few speeches here and there, and everyone wants to be a part of it. That's what stood out.
I can't imagine being somebody right in the middle of that crowd. It's going to take you 3 days to get out.
They don't care.
I don't know what you can even see from there, but just being a part of it, just being there, feeling the atmosphere, feeling the energy.
There's going to be some parties, I think, after this particular
get-together. This might be a fun weekend in Chicago.
Yes, absolutely. As we welcome you back, MLB Now, Dan O'Dowd, Cliff Corcoran, Joe Lemire, and we're talking about options that were picked up or declined for players, and already, that's what happens, Dan. It's the next day, right? And we saw this yesterday.
Incredible.
There were moves being made, firing off, options
well,
picked up.
I think the Cubs actually made a waiver claim.
Did they?
During
Game 7, before Game 7. They claimed Connor Mooley off waivers from the Yankees, the injured pitcher.
Look at Jed Hoyer working while they have the World Series going on.
I remember a few years ago when the Yankees made the big trade for Granderson. You know, Cashman admitted that it was before Game 1 of the World Series the previous year that he made the first call to Dombrowski to set the wheels in motion. Because, you know what, as I'm sure you know, once you get to a certain point, that roster is set. You got to start thinking toward next year.
There is no offseason.
Nope. And you mentioned Curtis Granderson. Let's start with the New York Mets because Jay Bruce has an option. It's picked up. It's $13 million. Now there's Michael Conforto there. There's Curtis Granderson there, and Jay Bruce, Juan Lagares as well. Who's playing center field for the Mets next year?
Yeah, that is a great question. And
you're supposed to have the answer to that.
I know, and I think Juan Lagares is someone that is great defensively, but just the bat doesn't play on an everyday basis. He's, I think, a platoon player at best. And so, maybe Granderson gets some work out there. It certainly went okay in a short sample size last year, but they really need to figure out what the long-term option is. Brandon Nimmo has some potential.
But then you got to boot someone out.
I know.
So maybe they probably need to make a trade, this team.
They probably do. But I think, someone like Jay Bruce, at that money, you're going to pick it up because he has power. And, between him, Conforto, Granderson, you're going to, maybe one of them will have some value to somebody else. But it's a good chip, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think the Mets model is not run prevention, except for the guys standing on the hill.
Run prevention via strikeout.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I think it's focused on run creation. I don't think any one-year deal in our game is an awful deal. Some may not work out. But when you can see the end of the deal, when you sign it the first day, that's a good deal because it doesn't drag your payroll down for years to come. Yeah. But they have an interesting mix, to say the least, in the outfield. But it also gives them some flexibility to make other decisions. If they happen to re-sign Cespedes, I'm really curious how that's all going to work out.
This is day 2, so yeah, pieces might move a little bit.
Sure.
They have a lot of those outfielders are left-handed, and so in terms of you think, well, maybe they can get a platoon situation with Lagares, who is a good defensive center fielder but hasn't hit much. He's the one righty they have, but then Nimmo, who's the next best defensive center fielder, doesn't have much of a platoon split. There's not a fit there in terms of a platoon, but Bruce is a platoon bat, so they need a right-hander somewhere in there. Cespedes is going to be a big payday. I think they're going to talk to him. I don't know if they're going to bring him in. center field, there's a right-handed center fielder we were just talking about named Ian Desmond out there. But now you're talking about bringing in more outfielders.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of
But the Dodgers did this in recent years, and then you can deal from that strength. So,
it didn't work out real well for the Dodgers.
It didn't work out real well for the Dodgers, well, except they keep going to the playoffs.
I know, but as far as their outfield depth is concerned, I think they ended up releasing Crawford. Ethier they got stuck with.
Crawford was a poison pill in a trade, but yeah.
Yeah, I got you. It's just, it's hard. And the other thing, Cliff, when other clubs see you in a box, and that you're kind of stuck with the roster you have, it's not like they're going to bail you out of that box. They may get a player from you, but they're not going to try to give you very much back.
So how much does the depth matter for pitchers, say? Let's move to Clay Buchholz, $13.5 million, and the Boston Red Sox pick him up. We know they have cash, but does that make sense?
I think it does, because again, it's that short-term deal. It's someone who pitched well enough down the stretch that they gave him a postseason start. Set from August and September over his final 50 innings, his ERA was 3.02. So this was a very different pitcher in the second half. I think the Red Sox are also realizing that some of the AAA arms they've had in recent years, the Henry Owens of the world, especially Brian Johnson, maybe they're not going to be quite the rotation pieces they thought. But again, everyone wants pitching. There's a huge attrition rate. If nothing else, you can make a trade.
And he filled in well as a reliever for a bit of time this year.
The thing with Buchholz is that there was something real behind that improvement. Last 8 starts, including postseason, was a 2.80 ERA. And he went with Brian Bannister and realized that his arm slot had dropped. So he got back up over top, started pitching out of the stretch where it was easier for him to keep that release point. And there was real change in his mechanics that led to a change on the field. So they banked on that. And he's a 6th starter. It's depth that's important for them to have because, yes, they have Price, Porcello, Pomeranz, Wright, and Rodriguez. But you can't get through the whole season with 5 guys, particularly those 5 guys, with Pomeranz having some concerns about his elbow, with Wright being hurt at the end of the year, with Rodriguez being young. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. You need 6 starters really going into a season. So I think it's fine.
Just ask the Dodgers nowadays. You need, 10, 12 starters on your team, Dan?
Yeah, and I do think patience is the one thing that gets rewarded in our game. This is a guy that's tested their patience. But you really don't want to let an arm like this go somewhere else when maybe, as Cliff said, he started to figure it out the second half of the year. Pitching out of the bullpen, really helped his value within their mix because now there's some flexibility there. But I do think this is a one-year deal. Dollar-wise, this is a franchise that certainly can afford that type of commitment without boxing themselves and doing other things they want to do. So I think this was a good decision overall.
All right, let's take you back to Think Baseball one more time to refresh it in your mind. We give you a lot of time to think about it. And just think about this. Quantity and quality needed when you're choosing which reliever has the highest win probability added in a single postseason, because this is a cumulative number. So they need to have pitched in the wild card era. That's coming up. Promise.
They're not ready for this. Try me. Experience the film Peter Travers of Rolling Stone says is riveting. A psychedelic stunner. See it in IMAX 3D.
You think you can handle that?
Oh, yeah. Doctor Strange, rated PG-13, now playing everywhere.
This just in, Wendy's announces a new Swiss Junior Bacon Cheeseburger as an option with the 4 for $4 for a limited time. With 4 nuggets, fries, and a drink for just $4, the Swiss Junior Bacon Cheeseburger. Now back to America.
Well, it's too long living in the same old lies. I feel too cold to live, too young to die. Won't you follow me into the jungle? Won't you follow me into the jungle?
Liberty Mutual stood with me when I was too busy with the kids to get a repair estimate. I just snapped a photo and got an estimate in 24 hours.
My insurance company definitely doesn't have that.
You can leave worry behind when Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
The world is full of surprising moments. They're everywhere. And as a Marriott Rewards member, I can embrace them all.
The new Marriott portfolio of hotels now has 30 brands in over 110 countries. So no matter where you go, you are here. Join or link accounts at members.marriott.com.
And can you explain to me why you recommend synthetic over cedar?
Superfood. Is that a real thing?
It's a great school, but is it the right one for her?
Is this really any better than the one you got last year?
If we consolidate suppliers, what's the savings there?
So should we go with the 467 horsepower?
Or is a 423 enough?
Good question.
You ask a lot of good questions.
I think we should move you into our new fund.
Sure.
Okay.
But are you asking enough about how your wealth is managed? Wealth management at Charles Schwab.
Nothing worth having comes easy. You have to get up every morning and put in the work.
Give him another.
Time, effort, commitment. These are your tools. You have to understand that there are no shortcuts here. Whether you're playing in the majors or making seriously good bourbon, you know the greatest achievements in life don't just happen. They're earned.
Hey, it's Enrico Palazzo!
Leslie Nielsen.
Is this an official bath?
Along with Priscilla Presley, Reggie Jackson, and a cast that'll have you laughing out of your seat. The Naked Gun, November 11th on MLB Network.
Think baseball. Give us an answer, and this is an Andrew Miller type character, reliever with the highest win probability added in a single postseason. Throw out some names.
Whatever year Mariano pitched in postseason.
We were talking about his 96 season when he was setting up before.
You're so close. It's not him. It's a buddy.
Oh, John Wetland.
John Wetland.
Really?
A part of that team. Yes.
In
Coming up in bigger
96.
moments in
had that. You didn't
1996.
ask him.
Joe, you're throwing it out there.
I should have. I would have, in the commercial, I was thinking Rivera 96, so I got partial credit.
So
No,
John
I think we
Wetland
forget
and then
sometime how great a reliever Johnny Wetland was.
And how close a lot of those games were. We were talking about that Morris game, that game of Smoltz and Pettit in that 1996 World Series. I almost had a heart
You know,
attack
if
watching
the
that
Expos
game.
had gone, if there wasn't a strike in 1994, the nation would have seen how good Wetland was.
And then Mo, the rest of the list, of course. An ode to Mo. And let's do now or never right now and finish up, and we'll start with Cliff Corcoran.
I look at the words now or never, and I can't help but think of the Cubs. It seemed like they were never going to win the World Series, but now they have.
Yes. And then.
Well, for me, now think about this. The Cubs and the Indians play Game 7. The GM meetings start on Monday. So that shows you that the baseball calendar takes no prison. And as enjoyable as this is from a GM standpoint, a front office standpoint, it is so fleeting because when one season ends, the next one has already begun. And you've got to start already jumping into how you put yourself back in a position of doing that again.
And there was debate on when this parade would be for the Chicago Cubs, Friday or Monday. Monday, there's no Theo Epstein there.
Keep in mind now, the guys in uniform, they've got a few months off here before they get to spring training, but the guys in the front office, man, they're grinding right away again because their season starts right now.
Joe?
Yeah, and I want to, on a different note, Wayne Drays has become a good friend of mine and a writer over at ESPN, lifelong Cubs fan, who recently learned that he was going to need open heart surgery, which he actually postponed until after the postseason in order to see the Cubs through the World Series. But he's having that surgery on Monday, so I wanted to wish him well, and I know a lot of the baseball writing community is thinking of him as well.
Wayne, we're thinking of you, and just the stories that came in on the Chicago Cubs.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was on the radio the other day, someone called in, mother passed away, and final words, Cubs are going to win it someday. And you hear a lot of that, and that's why people are heading to grave sites of ancestors, grandparents, whatever it is.
Chalking their names on the wall.
It really does show the impact what our game has on people's lives.
It was a special season. MLB Now is all done. Thanks for watching.